Okay, good morning, everybody. I changed the settings. I changed my microphone. I don't know if you can hear me a little better.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Ahora sí?
Sí,
Okay.
ahora sí.
And thank you guys. So let's get right to it. Okay. And you should be seeing my screen now. Okay, good. So let's start with, okay. I wanted to start with talking about the novel. I don't know how many of you have actually voted yet, but remember that in the announcement section here in Canvas, you can click on this selection that says novel selection vote. And at the end of this link, you can see it says to vote here. Click on the link, and it's going to bring you to the novel. And all you have to do is click on one, then press submit. I don't know how many of you have actually done that, but I'm still missing a few answers. And I'm still waiting on a couple more people to vote because I don't know if you can see right here, there is a three-way tie between The Giver, The Fault in Our Stars, and Ready Player One, with The Hunger Games in second place, Divergent in third. So if you guys haven't voted, now is the chance. Because if not, then I'm going to have to do a separate voting option in which I take these three, maybe these following two, and then get you to choose between those. Okay. Apart from that, I can't remember if it was in this section or the other section. Somebody asked me, how can you tell when a verb and when a verb is supposed to end with an S or an ES versus when we leave the verb as is? This is remember for the simple present. So I did a little bit of research just to be able to answer that question a little bit more safely, and it was as I suspected. Most verbs just have the S. There's not a specific rule in which you can tell whether or not to add the S. There are a couple of hints. For example, you can add S to the end of the verb when it has one or more consonants, such as calls, which has two L's, sends, which is ND, which is also two consonants, wants, also has two consonants here. It also, you can add S when it has one or more consonants plus an E, such as likes, races, rights, and of course when it ends with IE, like lie, die, tie, these all you would just add S to these at the end. And of course there's other ones when you only add ES, but we already saw that in a presentation which is already available on Canvas. There's other ones in which you can change the S or the ES based on the last vowel, which is the Z, the sounds that end with P, T, K, or F, and of course these, in which you just add S to ES, sorry. There's a couple of exercises, but I'm not going to go into that right now. So right now what we are going to do is this presentation here. And okay, so this, we already discussed the simple present and the present progressive. So now let's recap on the simple past and the past progressive. This presentation was created originally by Sandra Soto. It was modified by a friend of mine, William Carrero, and of course by myself. All right, so do you guys remember the rules for the simple present and the present progressive? For the simple present, what you have to do is you take the subject and the verb, which most probably will end in S, and of course the additional information. The progressive would be the subject, the be verb, the verb that ends with ing, and then the rest of the sentence. Okay? That's pretty much all you have to remember for the present. So I want you to tell us, what did you do yesterday? Just take a moment, a minute or two, write down what you did. You can write it in the chat, you can write it on your notebook, whatever. And then I'm going to go around asking you guys to speak up and tell me what you did. So let's take a look at the chat. All right, so take a moment and write a sentence or two telling us what you did yesterday. I'll give you a minute. I'll be sipping coffee until then. St. John and Pumpkin Angeles. Okay. Alumna wrote in the chat, yesterday what I did was study and do geology laboratories. Okay. Thank you, Alumna. All right, who else? How about Elisamuel and Jose? Okay, Armando. Yesterday I did exercise, studied, and played video games. Okay, good. Very good, Armando. That sounds fun. Josian, I was studying calculus class all day. Studying for calculus, all right. At least I went. Yesterday I went to work, and in the evening I took classes. Fantastic. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We're still missing someone. Evangeli, what about you? And I'll say, what about you? Oh, you already wrote, sorry. Okay. Yesterday I got up early to do exercises and bathe my dog. All right. So you guys have a good grasp of what you did. And when did you thank you? Yesterday I took class at 7 a.m. Oh my God. Then studied from organic chemistry and exercised at night. All right. So you guys are all able to write pretty good sentences in the past tense. One of you actually did one in the past progressive. So let's continue with the presentation. Keep doing this. Okay. So really the best way to tell what tense you're using is through the use of verbs. When you see how you're applying the verb, basically how you're conjugating it, you can tell whether or not you're writing in the past, the present, or the future tense. and of course, how you follow up that verb, how you accompany it, tells you more about that tense, whether or not it's simple or progressive. So there are a couple of types of verbs. There are regular verbs and there are irregular verbs. Regulares e irregulares. Of course, regular verbs are verbs that follow the verb modification rule and can be changed by adding ed or d at the end, which some of you already did. And there are irregular verbs. These are verbs that cannot be modified with ed or d. And there is actually no particular rule. Oh, there's no, this t is demás. There's no particular rule for these verbs, so they must be memorized. To help with that memorization, page 32 in the grammar book, which is Fundamentals of English Grammar, has a list of common irregular verbs. And there are other lists in the front and the back inside cover of the book. Okay, so we already dealt with the simple present. Now let's deal with the simple past. Of course, the simple past is used to talk about an action that started and ended in the past. So this is something that is absolutely already finished. There is no overlap into the present. It's all past. So the formula for this is subject, verb in the past tense, and of course other information. So this formula is very, very similar to the simple present formula, except the only difference here is that the verb is in the past tense now.
Professor, excuse me.
Yes.
I believe you're not presenting right now.
In serio? Oh my god.
Yeah, the screen, we can't see it.
Okay, give me a second. Oh yeah, you're right. Thank you for letting me know. Select
No problem.
entire screen. Okay, switch to Firefox because Google Chrome was taking up too much memory. And okay, so key. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, and okay, you see it in full screen now. So
it disappeared right now.
En serio? Okay. So now you can just see it as if you were looking at a PowerPoint that you're writing.
No, right now, like the presentation just disappeared. Like I only see the classroom. It was fine moments ago.
All right, now I see that. Actually, let me just select the screen. Maybe that should be okay.
Yep, there we go.
All right. So I don't know if you guys saw this, so I'm gonna talk about it again just so you can. So yeah, there's regular verbs. They follow the verb modification rule, and they can be changed by adding either ed or d at the end, which you guys already did in the sentences that you wrote. And there are irregular verbs, verbs that cannot be modified with ed or d. And as I said, there's no particular rule, but you can just look at page 32 and you can see the list of verbs that you can modify irregularly. Okay, so as I was showing you here, the simple past is used to talk about an action that already started and ended. The formula is very similar to the simple present. All you have to do to change it is to change the verb. And of course, you conjugate that verb instead of the present in the past tense. Here are a few examples. We moved to a new house. We take the base verb move and we add d to the end. They brought a sandwich. Okay, we took the base verb bring, which is irregular, and we modified it into the past. We conjugated it into the past tense, and it becomes brought. Number 3, I took my cat to the veterinary. We have this main verb take. That might be a little better. Okay, this main verb take, which is irregular, and we modified it into the past tense. So take becomes took. 4. My girlfriend's birthday was on Monday. The main verb here would be actually this be verb, was. Okay? If you have this be verb by itself as acting as the only available verb, as the main verb, then this would be a simple present. If you had another verb that ended with ing, in that case, that would be another tense. We're not going to talk about that right now. And of course, this last one, I picked up the phone and answered your call. You can have more than one verb within the sentence, and you have here the main verb pick, which we added ed to, we made it picked, and that is now in the past tense. Of course, the main verb answer, to which we also added ed to, and that is also in the past tense. So we have main verbs, which we just add a d to. We have main verbs, which are irregular, such as number 2 and 3. We have main verbs, which are just simply be verbs. And we can have more than one main verb in a sentence. So that was a simple past. Let's talk about the past progressive. So the past progressive formula would be very similar. It's subject, be, which is the be verbs, which in this case are was or were, so that would look better. The verb ending with ing, and of course other information. I'm going to actually delete this comment. And it's stuck. Fantastic. Okay. Well, anyways. So this formula is pretty much the same as the simple past, except for the addition of the be verb here, and of course the main verb ending with ing. So be verbs in the past, if you guys don't remember, are just was or were. And then we just add the verb with ing at the end. So how do we know when to use which be verb? How do I know to use was or to use were? Well, we use was for a singular subject when we're talking about just one thing. And of course, we use were for plurals, so when we're talking about two or more things. There's a couple of examples here. I was walking. So we have the be verb was, and then we have the main verb walk, to which we add ing. What's wrong with the cursor? Okay, that's better. As I was saying, well, the be verb was with the main verb walk, to which we added ing. So I was walking. This would be the past progressive form. We were sleeping. We have the be verb were, and we're using were because when we use we is a plural pronoun. So we have the main verb sleep, to which we simply added ing. The cat was yawning. Okay, be verb was, because it's one singular cat. Main verb yawn, to which we add ing. My dad was calling. That one's simple enough as well. And the students were crying. I don't know why you're crying, but you just were. So yes, you can tell I was is singular. The cat was singular. My dad was singular. We were plural, and the students were, which is also plural. And all these verbs end with ing. So let's continue with the past progressive. Past progressive indicates a limited duration of time, and it is a convenient way to indicate that something took place in the simple past while something else was happening. For example, Carlos lost his watch while he was running. If you take a look at the colors here, these are indicators for the tense that we're using. So the green verb lost is of course indicating the simple past, and the purple verbs, because it's more than one, indicates the past progressive. So Carlos lost, which is an irregular form of the main verb lose, would be in the simple past. And of course we have was running, which of course includes the be verb and includes the main verb with ing. This denotes the past progressive. Past progressive can express an incomplete action. For example, I was sleeping on the couch when Alejandro smashed through the door. If we take a look at the colors once again, of course, was sleeping would be the past progressive. If you look at the colors, this also indicates that. I was sleeping on the couch, which is one action. And then Alejandro smashed through the door. And if you notice something, both these sentences have these two verbs. In the first sentence, we see the simple past verb at the beginning, and then we end with the past progressive form. But in the second sentence, we switch it up. And now the past progressive is at the beginning, and then the simple past is in the end. So how can we tell whether or not this sentence is past progressive or simple if it contains two verbs? Well, I think the best way to see it is that if you see that it has a progressive form of the verb, then it automatically you're going to mark it as progressive. You could have another additional verb, which would be in the simple past, but as long as you still have that progressive form in that sentence, you're going to mark it as progressive. Hope that makes sense. Okay. So let's take a look at some specific sentences here. These are the same sentence, but they are written in both tenses. So on the left, we can see the simple past. On the right, we can see the past progressive form. So in the simple past, we could say the lady talked to the policeman. We know it's simple past because we have a main verb, which ends with ed here. And then, of course, the past progressive would be the lady was talking to the policeman. The only thing that changes is how we express that verb, because we still have the lady and to the policeman in both sentences. The only thing that changes would be either talked or was talking. So really, you can form sentences and you can change them from one tense to another, or at least one type of tense to another, just by changing how that verb is written. Give me 1 second. We have the second sentence, I ate an apple this morning. Okay, we have the irregular verb eat in the past tense, which becomes ate. And to make this one in progressive, we have to add a little bit more information, because if we go back to the previous discussion of the past progressive, we can see that it is a convenient way to indicate that something took place while something else was happening. So this is basically saying that two events took place within the past. So we have the simple past, which is I ate an apple this morning. And we know it's in the past because, as I said, the irregular verb ate. To make it into the past progressive, we had to add a little bit of information. So I was eating an apple this morning. The same idea applies. I was eating an apple this morning. All we did was change ate into was eating. And then we added this additional information, which is when I ran into Pedro. I was eating an apple this morning when I crossed paths with my friend Pedro. This last sentence here, Julian and I wrote a great story last night. We have the subjects Julian and I. We have the main verb wrote, which is an irregular form of the main verb write, and a great story last night. Julian and I were writing a great story last night. And in this one, it's just like the first sentence. All we did was change how we express that main verb, and this sentence automatically becomes progressive. Okay, so let's review the simple past and the and the past progressive. Sorry about that. I don't know if you guys can see that. Maybe I could zoom in a little more. Just okay. So I think that should be fine. So in the simple past, as we can see in this graph, the center of this graph is the present, and of course anything to the left of that would be in the past, and the right would be future. So we just see this one single event that occurred in the past, but it's already in the past, and there's nothing tying it to the present. Versus in the past progressive, of course, when we take a left of present, we see an event was happening when another event occurred. And then, of course, they might have already continued on into the future a little bit, but that is already in the past, all of it. So the simple past is used to talk about an activity or situation that began and ended at a particular time in the past. For example, yesterday, last night, 2 days ago, in 2007, as in sentences A and B. So Mary walked downtown yesterday, and I slept for 8 hours last night. Okay? And of course, these are main verbs which are regular and irregular here. That would be the simple past. And for the past progressive, this expresses an activity that was in progress, was occurring, was happening at a point of time in the past, for example, at 6:10, or at another time, or at the time of another location. For example, at the time of another action. For example, when Tom came. Okay, let's take a look at sentence C. I sat down at the dinner table at 6 p.m. yesterday. Tom came to my house at 6:10 p.m. I was eating dinner when Tom came. Okay, this one gives us a lot more context than we need because it's, of course, explaining what I just said over here, which I'm circling with my mouse pointer. So, dinner started at 6. I was eating dinner, and then Tom knocked at the door at 6:10 p.m. Okay, so all this information really condenses what I'm saying here. I was eating dinner when Tom came. In C, sentence C, eating was in progress at 6:10. Eating was in progress when Tom came. Okay. And sentence D, I went to bed at 10. The phone rang at 11. I was sleeping when the phone rang. Okay. So really, the green sentence is actually the sentence we are looking at. All this stuff in black is just kind of the context for that sentence. And of course, the form for the past progressive is either was or were plus a verb ending with ing. Okay, example E. When the phone rang, I was sleeping. Example F. The phone rang while I was sleeping. When, it basically means at that time, and while means during that time. Examples E and F basically have the same meaning. And of course, you can use the past progressive in many different ways, such as statements, which are, yes statements, positive statements. We have negative statements, we have questions, and short answers. So in the statements, we use the pronouns or nouns, of course, I, he, she, and it, and all these four all use was. So I was working, she was working, he was working, it was working. And we use the verb were with the pronouns you, we, and they. So you were working, we were working, and they were working. And the negative applies in the exact same way, except now we are making, of course, a negative, so we use no or not. So in this case, it would be was not or were not. So I was not working, she wasn't working, he was not working, and it wasn't working. And of course, we use the same pronouns, you, we, they, with were. We have questions in which we change the order of the subject and the be verb. So now instead of having the pronoun first and then the be verb, now we have the be verb and then the pronoun. Okay? Was I working? Was he working? Was it working? Was she working? And of course, we use were with you, we, and they. So were they working? Were you working? And this you could be either plural or singular. And of course, short answers. Yes, I was. No, I wasn't. Or yes, they were. Or no, we weren't. So, oh, I gotta zoom out. All right. So I want you guys to practice. Create sentences in both. Give me 1 second. This was for the presentation, so I didn't think you'd see it like this. Okay. So create sentences in both simple past and past progressive with the following verbs: study, break, and cut. So take a couple of minutes. You can write them in the chat. You can write them in your notebook, whatever. Just make sure that you are sure that the sentence you're writing is simple past or past progressive. And basically, I want to see 6 sentences from each of you. Okay? So you make study in simple past, and you make a sentence with study in the past progressive. Same thing with break, same thing with cut. Okay? I'm going to write it in the chat so you can see it. Study, break, cut. Okay? So Alondra got a head start, and she said, yesterday I was studying in the kitchen. Okay, Alondra, so your sentence would be in which tense? Would it be simple past or past progressive? Past progressive, very good. So I'm going to give you guys a couple of minutes so you guys can do that. Okay. I'm going to take a look at what you guys have written so far. Okay, so Armando said, I studied for a few hours. So Armando, that first sentence that you wrote 3 minutes ago, I studied for a few hours. That would be in which tense? Would it be simple past or past progressive?
It's simple past.
Exactly right. Alondra, your second sentence, my dog broke my phone. That would also be in the simple past, of course. We have the main verb break, which is irregular and becomes broke. Muy bien. Josian, yesterday I was studying all day. Past progressive. Exactly right. We have the be verb was and then the main verb with ing studying. Okay, good job. Evangeli, simple past. I studied from genetics yesterday. That one, you need to conjugate the verb still. Had you written studied, as I am about to type it, where's it? Then that would be in the simple past tense because you would have conjugated the verb. But you give it context, so we do know that it is, in fact, in the past tense. So that's good. Just make sure you always conjugate the verb. Don't use present form of the verb when you're talking about past. Armando, I studied for a few hours and then went outside to eat my snack. Okay, this is basically two verbs. We have studied and then went outside. Let me keep. Okay, you should be seeing my screen now. And it's just so you can see what I'm highlighting. So I studied for a few hours and then went outside to eat my snack. We have, of course, studied, which is the same verb here, study, but we conjugated it with the past tense, within the past tense. And then we have the regular verb go, which in the past tense is went. Okay, this would be simple. Yes, Armando, this would be simple past. Jose, simple past, you did not play basketball. Okay, so did not play basketball. That is true. So we have, in this case, this is a very good example, actually, Jose. We do have a verb here, play, which is written in the present form because we already have the main verb, which is in the past tense. And this is did, okay? In this case, you really shouldn't write you did not played basketball. That double conjugation makes that sentence ungrammatical. In this case, well, it would be the action of playing basketball, I don't know how to specify the difference between play and did play. But basically the fact that you have a verb first that is negatory, and then we have another verb, that first verb would be conjugated in the past tense. And that would be correct. This would be simple past. Evangelie wrote, I was studying, which is in the past progressive. That's good. And then, of course, she saw sushi. That's my cat. Eli Samuel, I studied all night. I was studying all night. I had to cut the wires. I was cutting the wires. My car broke down. My car was breaking down constantly. Okay, so Eli Samuel lo sacó todo un cantazo. He did all these in one sitting. That's good. So the first one would be main verb study. So I studied all night would be simple past. I was studying would be past progressive, sorry. I had to cut the wires. I was cutting the wires. Okay. Okay, that is true. That is good. I had to cut the wires. Okay. You know, you could also, Eli Samuel, your third sentence, I had to cut the wires. You could just write it as this. I cut the wires, and that would be actually more in line with simple past. Because I had to, it kind of looks more like another form of the past, which we're not going to discuss just yet. But if you wrote it just as I cut the wires, that would be simple past. I was cutting the wires is good. That's perfect. My car broke down. Good. My car was breaking down constantly. Okay. In this case, breaking is misspelled though. Remember that break is B-R-E-A-K. So this would be written breaking. Like this. Jose. Past progressive. Last week we were painting the house. Okay, we have pronoun we, which implies plural. So we're using were, which is correct. This is good. And so we have the be verb were, and of course main verb with ing, painting. Very good, Jose. Kenneth, I didn't realize you arrived. Okay, so past progressive, on my way to school. I was studying for the exam. Hopefully you're not driving and studying at the same time. Okay, so on my way to school, I was studying for the exam. This will be past progressive, of course. You have the be verb was, and then the main verb study with ing. Very good. And this is me replying to somebody. Julie replying to something else. Kenneth, later that day, my sister studied a lot for the next English exam. Okay. Later that day, my sister studied a lot. Okay. This context here, later that day, it is a little confusing, but I see what you mean now. And it is simple past. But you say later that day, and then you say the next English exam, and that kind of makes it seem like it's future. So if you had removed either later that day or next, it might make a little bit more sense. It might seem more in tune with past. So you could say my sister studied a lot for the next English exam. That would be fine. Or you could say later that day, my sister studied a lot for the English exam. Okay. If you remove one or the other, it might make it seem a little bit more like simple past. But seeing it, how you conjugated it, it's good. Josian, Luis and Jose were cooking for the party on Friday. Luis and Jose, that would be plural. So were is the correct form of the be verb. Cook, of course, cooking. That's good. Okay, someone all right, breaking. Evangelie, I didn't break the crystal table. He was breaking down the box to build it again. Okay, I didn't break. Okay, this, Evangelie, is another good example of how we have two verbs, and then because we have did, we don't conjugate break into its past tense form. Because you could have said in the positive form, I broke the crystal table. And that way, since you don't have did, that would be in the simple past. But since you added did, in this case didn't, and Entonces, you don't conjugate break into its past tense form. That's very good. He was breaking down the doghouse to build it again. Okay, that's good. No comments there. Josiang, I didn't see the presentation in the last class. Simple past. Did not see. Okay, exactly right. This is also another example of the same thing I just mentioned with Evangeli's crystal tables. We use the verb did, in this case didn't, which is negatory, negative. And then we have the verb see, which is in the present form, if you guys noticed. If that didn't exist, you could say I saw the presentation in the last class. That would be, of course, an affirmation, that would be a statement, but we would be using see in its past form. All right, so I'm going to add that to the presentation because for some reason, I forgot to add it. But yes, that's very good. And it is basically time. Evangeli, last sentence, I had to cut down the tree in front of the house. That would be simple past. Okay. So antes de que se vayan, I hope you can see it says I am presenting, so you should be seeing everything. Okay. And time is almost up. So basically, there is some spelling on there are some rules on how to spell these conjugated verbs in the past tense. So basically, sometimes you have to double the consonant, which is the same thing we did for the present progressive. This is all available on the presentation. I'm going to upload this once class ends. And there are some regular verbs and their pronunciations. So, for example, you don't say stopped, you say stopped. Stuff like that. Right now, I'm out of time, so I guess that's it for today. You guys, thank you for your attention. Remember that our next class is Friday, so it's asynchronous. We're not meeting on Fridays anymore. So just estén pendiente. I'm going to upload a couple of assignments, a couple of sentences for you to either identify their tense or write in a specific tense. So watch out for that. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your time. I'm going to double check my attendance because I saw a couple of people arrived a little bit later. So if you guys don't have any questions or comments, then I will see you on Monday. Joyce Young and Jang. Thank you, Evangeli. All right, Kenneth, have a wonderful day. Thank you, Jose. Cuídate. Alondra, I'll see you around. Armando y Kenneth. Okay. All right. I'll see you guys.